With the absolutely insane Imu reveal, a lot of people are questioning, including you and me, what even is Imu? Is he a Lunarian? Is he a hybrid of an ancient giant and a Lunarian? Is he human? And why does he look so different from his shadowy form? Well, after chapter 1181 and 1180, we got an interesting insight into Imu's Maki, and the clue lies within Maki. But before I get into that, I would really appreciate anyone who wants to become a member and gain access to some absolutely insane perks. But of course there is no pressure at all. Simply liking and commenting is already way more than enough for me. So let's get back into the video. At this point, it's clearly no secret that Maki contrasts Haki. Haki is the manifestation of your willpower and ambition and overall presence, how you carry yourself essentially. But with how Imu described Maki and how it dwells within all things, and how through corruption and envy do you gain the power of Maki, it feels like Maki is the literal manifestation of sin, contrasting Haki, which is the manifestation of willpower. Because we all sin, each and every single one of us, even Luffy, we all sin. That's why Imu says it dwells within all things. You wanna know why Chopper can undo Domi Reversi? Oda said that if a human ate the human fruit, it's implied that you become enlightened. Lunapian Arts, great YouTuber by the way, check out his channel, theorized how due to Chopper gaining intelligence and reason when he ate the human fruit, he was able to slap reason back into the Domi Reversi giants. And with that, my theory is that the newfound reason coming back within the giants is what counterbalanced their sinful desires, or Maki, and that's why they regained their form. So, did you catch it? Imu's Maki balls with the faces on them strongly resemble Imu's form when he tanked Sabo's attack, which led me to one conclusion. Imu is literally Maki itself. Why? Because Imu is the most evil person in the One Piece world, so he is the physical manifestation of sin, corruption and oppression. That's why his body has become Maki itself. Maki has consumed him completely. It seems to me that Imu has lost his humanity quite literally. That's why Imu's blob form that he's always in is Maki. One of the biggest unsolved mysteries is the origin of devil fruits and how they were exactly created, never mind the other several mysteries surrounding Blackbeard's devil fruit itself. But if devil fruits are in fact created from the dreams of others, just like Dr. Vegapunk suggested, then the big question is, who on earth would dream of a devil fruit that would take away other devil fruits, symbolically taking away their dream as their dream created those devil fruits? Because Blackbeard's devil fruit is a devil fruit that can nullify other devil fruit powers, effectively taking away those dreams. And when we think about dreams in One Piece, we often think about characters tied to the Will of D, although yes, not always necessary. You don't always need the Will of D to have a dream, but when it comes to the Will of D, even the more morally grey characters who have the Will of D are dreamers. Just look at Blackbeard and Roxy the Beck. And if during the Void Century the Will of D were responsible for creating many of the devil fruits through their dreams, then as the natural enemies of God, that would put the Celestial Dragons at a disadvantage. Which naturally leaves us with one big uncomfortable question. What type of person or group would dream of taking away other people's dreams? Well, who are the natural enemies of the Will of D? Yes, those are the Celestial Dragons. In other words, the Celestial Dragons, in particular Imu, dreamt of taking away other devil fruits, since those devil fruits most likely put the 20 Kings at a losing position during the Void Century War. And so Imu, through enough dreaming and will, the Darkness Fruit, a fruit capable of nullifying the dreams of others and the powers of others, came into existence. Now, I am not saying that Imu ate the Darkness Fruit or that Imu was the previous wielder of the devil fruit. No, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that Imu is the one who created it, whether he knows it or not. Because this idea of taking away dreams is the very thing that Imu is about. Imu is everything that Joy Boy and Luffy isn't. And Blackbeard's devil fruit symbolically represents all of Imu's values of taking away people's dreams. Luffy's dream, Joy Boy's dream. And would you have a look at that? Blackbeard's natural enemy is Luffy. And if Blackbeard has the fruit that Imu created and he's fighting against Luffy, it's almost as if Imu wants to take away the dream of Luffy or the abilities of Luffy through the Darkness Fruit. And what's even more horrifying are the very clear similarities between Imu's darkness powers and Blackbeard's black hole powers, which come from his devil fruit. It's almost as if they come from the very same being, Imu. And this is quite symbolic because if Blackbeard is the one who defeats Imu, that would effectively mean Imu was defeated by his own devil fruit that he created. He was defeated by his own dreams, his own wish. So when you tie together the Will of D, the dreamers of the Void Century, and the Celestial Dragons who feared those dreams, then the Darkness Fruit starts to look like a weapon born born from desperation and fear. And if Imu really is the one who created Blackbeard's devil fruit, then the idea that Blackbeard could one day overthrow Imu using the power that he created is quite symbolic in its own. It's as the iconic saying goes, always be careful what you wish for. Imu and Joy Boy. For the longest time, we all assumed that Imu and Joy Boy were the complete enemies. But it seems like it's the total opposite. It was Joy Boy who betrayed Imu, and it seems to me that they both share the exact same ideology of dominion. And it was Joy Boy who broke Emu's trust here, because this type of reaction, it only comes from something far deeper than the usual good versus evil. No, this conflict, this emotion, this feels personal. Joy Boy hurt Imu on a deep emotional level, portraying Imu in a very sympathetic light. And the thing that I have been stressing for so long is that Imu has been acting this way since the final saga began, not just in 1181. This is nothing new. People, you should not be surprised. This has been all over the final saga. Joy Boy may not be the saint that we think he is, because betrayal is a very common theme in One Piece. We have Kanjuro, York, Corazon, and the list goes on and on and on. This panel of Imu screaming, it may seem exaggerated and funny at first, but the more exaggerated and the more over the top a drawing is, the more emotion and story behind that drawing. I mean, when Ace died, look at how big Oda drew Luffy's mouth. Look at how big Oda drew Luffy's mouth when Sanji left the crew. The stronger the pain, the more exaggerated the emotion, and Imu's emotion is very exaggerated here, suggesting that Joy Boy caused a very deep emotional pain to Imu. Just look at how Imu carried himself in chapter 1179, from his interactions with the Gorosei, to his speech about fate, to his resolve to put his life on the line. Imu genuinely felt like a main character here. And remember my crackpot theory about Imu being a pirate? Well, Imu and the Gorosei genuinely felt like Luffy and the Straw Hats here, like their own pirate crew. Imu talking about how the past keeps repeating itself, and then like a shonen protagonist, he challenges fate, he wants to defy the odds. How long will he make Mu suffer? Again, with that victim mindset. Imu wholeheartedly believes that he's the good guy here. He even gives the whole typical shonen main character line, I entrust the Holy Land onto thy hands. And then you've got the Gorosei all begging him not to go, and Venus Juro and Garling basically saying, deal with it. This kind of reminds me of everyone begging Usopp not to leave the crew, and Zoro being the one to step up and remind them all that this is what it means to be a captain. We are not playing pirates anymore. You can't allow disrespect on the crew. And bro, just look at the pain. Just look at the pain in Mars's eyes. Like, come on, they love Imu. They care about Imu. Poor Imu. The entire build up to his grand arrival, the bleeding, the coughing, the screaming, the resolve to put his life on the line against those who have made him suffer the will of D. Imu felt like a tragic and sympathetic character just with his arrival. Alright, look, either Imu is straight up delusional and won't accept that he is actually in the wrong and he's convinced himself, or Imu is actually genuinely right and that Joy Boy did him wrong. Not only that, but that Davy Jones also did him wrong. More on him later. And he was actually right when he said that Davy Jones was never the king and that he needed to be usurped. Because after all, remember what Dr. Vegapunk actually said about Imu directly. I will not apply the labels of good and evil at all, because I understand way too little about him to begin with. This is not just Vegapunk theorizing. This is literally Oda giving us a hint, communicating with the readers through these characters. There is intention behind these lines. He is telling us that it's not as black and white as simply Imu bad and Joy Boy good. Like, no, One Piece is a story with heavy emphasis on truth versus perception. We got Zoro, Loki, Rox, Odin, Viper, Vivi, Nami. All these characters were portrayed as evil until we found out the truth about them. And I would not be surprised if Oda flipped this narrative device he uses and instead subverts our expectations of the good guy. We think Joy Boy is a good guy, but actually he is not a good guy. He's a flipping liar, a traitor. And do you know who else seemed to really traumatize poor Imu to an even greater extent than his bestie Joy Boy? Davy Jones! Look at how Emu reacts here. This is how a crazy ex would react when hearing the name of the ex-lover. It's quite the insane reaction. And just like with my Dr. Vegapunk point, Oda didn't just write this line, there is some element of truth to this. That Davy was never the true king. I talked about this in these two videos, why Emu was a pirate and what if Emu was right. That Davy Jones kept all the advanced technology of the ancient kingdom for himself and did not share them with the other nations, because why do nations like Dressrosa during the Void Century, during a time of advanced technology, why were they still relying on slavery to do labour? That literally makes no sense. It's as if the ancient kingdom hogged and kept all that technology for himself. The ancient kingdom was an advanced kingdom, right? And do you know who else was advanced? The people on the moon. Those people on the moon came down to Earth because they lacked resources. And what did they do when the people of Shandora and their island flew up to the sky? Guess what they did? They literally took over that land because they wanted those resources. So in a way, that whole event could be foreshadowing what happened during the Void Century. Nico Robin mentioned how Davy Jones was cursed to roam the sea floor, just like Zunisha is cursed to walk the earth. So what crime did Davy Jones commit so that he was cursed to roam the seas? What if both Davy Jones and Zunisha did a horrible crime to Emu? I think this line definitely proves that Davy Jones did something evil during the Void Century, because why else would he be cursed? And when we look at the Davy clan, we have Rox, who is rough around the edges. Then we've got Blackbeard, who we don't really need explaining. He's pretty self-explanatory. Emu was most likely a victim of Davy Jones's greed. His greed for wealth, fame and power. See what I did there? And maybe this is how Emu got Maki. He craved power. He craved that power through corruption and giving your will to a covenant. He wanted to overthrow the king who had wealth, fame and power. And it's funny because when Emu gives a speech about Maki dwelling in all things, how you need to crave power, it sounds very much like the wealth, fame and power speech from Roger. But when we take a look at this line, the world itself rejoices when in a state of dominion. Isn't that right, Joy Boy? It's suggesting that Joy Boy also believed in the ideology of dominion, and perhaps Joy Boy also hated Davy Jones for the evil king that he was, just like how Luffy fought to liberate other nations for the sake of one person. Perhaps Joy Boy wanted to liberate Emu's nation of poverty, but betrayed Emu in the last minute. And you know what? A betrayal from Joy Boy would not be surprising, not in the least, because you know who else has already betrayed Emu and was part of the will of D? Nefertari D. Lily. What I find quite human and very underrated about Emu is how much hope and cope he had for Lily, even whilst acknowledging Lily's blunder as that, a blunder, a crime that prolonged this 800-year-long war. Emu still hoped that deep down that it was only a mistake and not intentional. And when he found out that she was a D, basically confirming that she was on Joy Boy's side, and that this was intentional. He felt so much rage and pain and took it out on her descendant, Cobra. And even after finding out that he was betrayed by Lily, Emu still has a picture of Lily on his wall, suggesting that Emu quite literally loved Lily unconditionally. Maybe as a romantic partner or a friend, but it doesn't matter. It still proves to us that Emu is far more complex, tragic and deeper than we can ever realize. Are you seeing a pattern here amongst Joy Boy's companions? You got Zunisha who made a mistake, you got Emma who apologizes to Joy Boy, you got Joy Boy himself who broke a promise to Poseidon, you got Lily who made a blunder. Come on, there's so much foreshadowing that Joy Boy probably did something to Emu here, especially after this chapter. And if you're still not buying this whole Emu is a tragic figure idea, then I'm sure that you would agree that Doflamingo is a parallel to Emu himself. They are both celestial dragons. They both control enemies like puppets to do their bidding. They both rule over a group of people under a false utopia where everyone believes that they are the good guys. They both have loyal subordinates where one had betrayed them, Lily and Corazon. They both have wiped away any history that inconveniences them. Emu with the Void Century and Doflamingo using Sugar's power. Heck, Doflamingo literally wants to become Emu himself, and rule the world. He said that he wanted the Ope no Mi so that he could make full use of the secret treasure of the Holy Land and rule the world, just like Imu, who is ruling the world right now. And Ivankov literally said that Imu is the recipient of the Ope no Mi, the fruit that Doflamingo wants. And guess what? Doflamingo has a sad backstory, and Imu, being the final evolution of Doflamingo, most likely has one as well. So overall, Imu was a poverty-ridden man who desired great power, which is how he got Maki. Joyboy was most likely his first friend and his right-hand man, but Joyboy betrayed him for the man that he hated and was the source of his poverty, Davy Jones. And somewhere along the way, Imu formed a romantic connection with Lily, but Lily betrayed him for the men that he hated, Joyboy and Davy Jones, and then took the name of D, which led to Imu spiraling into the man that he is today. What if I told you that 300 years before the Void Century, Imu was actually considered to be a hero of all things, even to the point where his name and his heroics were actually carved into the poneglyphs themselves, and that you completely missed this hidden secret that was under your noses this entire time. And I know it may seem hard to believe, but by the end of the video you will have a much better understanding of what Imu's backstory might have possibly been. Because if you look back in chapter 203 of One Piece, right, when Nico Robin reads the poneglyphs, she reads, in the year 325, which by the way takes place 300 years before the start of the Void Century, Mamudin was the great hero of Altia. And if you were paying attention, you'd instantly notice the Mu in the hero's name, Mamudin. Imu Mamudin. And we know that Imu often refers to himself as just Mu. You know, Mu's world is not complete. The word Mu holds a lot of weight in One Piece, and knowing the type of writer Oda is, why would he just leave something like this randomly? Surely this has some meaning to it, especially if this was a chapter when Nico Robin first ever read the poneglyphs on page. Literally one of the biggest moments in One Piece mentioned this Mamudin figure. And as we all know that Imu is immortal, it's possible that throughout the centuries, Imu has changed his identity and name. For example, we know that Imu was once known as Nerona Imu. Is it really that much of a stretch to believe that he could have also been called Mamudin? And don't you find it a bit of a coincidence that Alabasta was one of the 20 nations that actually joined Imu to take down the ancient kingdom, right? And Alabasta is also the place where Nico Robin found the poneglyph that actually talks about Mamudin. Maybe Imu's fascination with Alabasta is much deeper than just, oh Lily, oh Vivi. Have you ever wondered why Imu is obsessed with Lily beyond the whole blunder thing? You might be wondering, alright, okay, but why would the Kazuki clan, who are on Joyboy's side, write down the name of Imu's name on their poneglyphs? Well, considering this was over 300 years before the Void Century, perhaps the poneglyphs were made even before the Void Century and this was just part of recorded history. But recorded history that is very, very important to Imu's backstory. Maybe back during those times, Imu and countries with ties to Joyboy were actually on good terms. That's why Imu knows so much about the will of D. And despite how evil he is today, he still at the end of the day managed to get 20 kings on his side. However, when the ancient kingdom got access to advanced technology, whilst Imu's kingdom of Altia was actually deprived of those things, Imu and the 20 kings had no choice but to fight back against the greedy ancient kingdom who refused to share their advanced technology. Since Dr. Vegapunk did say that he wasn't sure who was in the right and who was in the wrong. We know that resources is a very important thing in One Piece. Luffy said that he wanted to create a world where all of his friends could eat. He didn't want to leave Wano until everyone could eat as much as they wanted. With this heavy emphasis on resources, could this be the reason of the Void Century War? Was Imu actually valid in his reasons? Considering Imu could have been the hero of Altia, Mamudin, maybe his kingdom Altia was destroyed by one of the ancient weapons held by the ancient kingdom. And with no resources and with no bloody kingdom, that's why he fought back. And if you look at one of the 20 kings, Dressrosa, they still had to rely on slavery, whilst the ancient kingdom did not need any of that because they were bloody advanced. So with everything in mind, it's clear to me that Imu in the past was a hero of a nation, but he had justifiable reasons to fight back against the ancient kingdom due to a lack of resources, but then he let the power get to his head. This would also explain why he thought Davy D. Jones was never a king. Not that he never was a king in the literal sense, but that he wasn't worthy of being a king. So yes, I am definitely convinced that this Mammutian figure was definitely Imu, and that Imu's flashback will see him save the kingdom of Altia. But what if I also told you that Imu has multiple bodies? What on earth did Imu mean when he said that he also has to pay a price when he makes a contract with one of the Gorosei or the Holy Knights? What price does Imu exactly pay here? Well, in that very panel where he says that he has to pay a price, he actually says huff huff at the end, which suggests that he's in a lot of pain or is tired. Why is that the case? Well, what if I told you that just like in a video game, Imu has multiple lives, and that those multiple lives are the reason why he formed contracts with the Gorosei and the Holy Knights? We all know Imu is immortal, right? He can share his immortality with others via regeneration or never being able to age. Imu essentially shares a bit of himself, his very being, with the people he has formed the contracts with. And that's why when Imu finished off Saturn, Imu didn't have the same reaction he had in this chapter where he's freaking out and he's out of breath and he's like huff puff, because he simply took back the life force that he gifted to Saturn in the first place. But what if that role was reversed? When Loki defeated Holy Knight Harold, Imu panicked because this time around, the life force he shared with Harold, which granted him immortality in the first place, did not return back to Imu. Because unlike the Saturn case, this came from an outside influence, that being Loki. And this actually hurt Imu, as we saw in this panel. How are you wondering? Well, what if Imu forms these contracts with others in the first place to essentially create extensions of himself, a bit like Vegapunk and the Satellites? In other words, the same way Vegapunk and the Satellites are just extensions of himself, what if Imu, the Gorosei and the Holy Knights are just extensions of Imu? They're all Imu. What if Imu is weak if he's completely alone without the existence of the Gorosei and the Holy Knights? In other words, Imu actually needs, he is dependent on the Gorosei and the Holy Knights for him to actually be strong. Allow me to elaborate on that. Just like in a video game where you have multiple lives or a health bar, I think Imu will lose a life if a knight dies. Imu's max bar health would be 13 or his number of lives would be 13 because that's the amount of people he can only make contracts with. But if Imu doesn't make the contract with other people and runs out to 0, he loses all his health points. Just like in a video game, he will then die. Hence why Imu was like freaking out when Harold got defeated by Loki, and why he didn't want to send another Holy Knight to Elbaf. There's also another tie to Imu and video games, like when he does Domi Reversi, we actually see a board game demonstration. CP0 also played board games during the Wano arc. So yes, you can defeat Imu by defeating all of the Holy Knights, but it won't work if you do it one by one, because Imu can just form a new contract with someone else. So the key to defeating Imu is simply defeating all of the Holy Knights and the Gorosei because they have contracts with Imu, without giving Imu enough time to form new contracts with anyone else. This is often something that goes over the heads of many people, but the reason why Imu is immortal is no secret. It was pretty much spelled out to us after the destruction of the Lucia Kingdom, where Ivankov theorizes that the only way for Imu to be immortal is to be the recipient of that fruit, the Ope Ope no Mi. Now pay attention because this is key. The only way for someone to know that the Ope Ope no Mi works and its abilities is for someone to be the recipient of that fruit. Otherwise, how would anyone know if the ability is true? This is basically Oda giving the reader a sneaky wink as to confirm what is being said. And to further back up my point, do you remember Dressrosa when Doflamingo said if only he had Law's Devil Fruit, he'd have the power to make full use of the secret treasure of the Holy Land, and that would make him rule the world? Coincidentally, the one ruling the world right now is Imu, who also coincidentally has one of the properties of the Ope Ope no Mi, the Eternal Youth Surgery. Oda couldn't be any more on the nose about this. This essentially means that not only does Imu have his own devil fruit, Imu also has the effect of another fruit gifted to him, the Eternal Youth Surgery, meaning that Imu wields the power of 2 devil fruits. Now ask yourself, who else has 2 devil fruits? That's right, Blackbeard. I believe one of the devil fruits Rox D. Zebek was looking for in order to take down Imu was the Darkness Fruit, as this nullifies all Devil Fruit powers, as we have seen Blackbeard do this with Ace, Luffy, Whitebeard and Boa Hancock. And so this essentially means that unlike the legends we see in this panel, Blackbeard will actually be able to land solid blows on Imu and actually do some damage, stopping his regeneration as long as Blackbeard gets in close range to actually grab hold of him, since his regeneration does come from his Devil Fruit. The Darkness Devil Fruit is a natural counter to Imu's regeneration because it nullifies Devil Fruits. But that still doesn't solve the issue of immortality, as that is a completely separate matter from regeneration. Blackbeard may be able to land blows on Imu and negate his regeneration, but that's why the Ope Ope no Mi previously was referred to as the ultimate devil fruit, since it gives you immortality, and you don't even have to suffer any of the drawbacks of having a devil fruit, such as drowning or being overpowered by Haki or Blackbeard's darkness logia, because you are only the recipient of that fruit, not the wielder of the fruit itself. This is why all of those legends using their Haki coated attacks did no damage to Imu, with Joy Boy being the exception. Perhaps he is on another level of Haki that is yet to be reached. The only one close to Joy Boy is Shanks, meaning Blackbeard, just like his father Rox, will have to team up with someone to take down Imu. Now, let me ask you a question. Can you tell me the last time we heard that Blackbeard formed an alliance with someone? If you can't remember, it was during the Rocky Port incident, where Blackbeard, Kobe, and Law formed an unlikely alliance at Pirate Island, each with their own goals. Blackbeard wanted to get revenge on Ochoki for betraying Rox and reclaiming Pirate Island as his rightful headquarters, as it was previously Rox's. Law wanted to hand in the hearts of 100 pirates to the Marines to become a warlord, and Kobe was there to save civilians. Oda could have easily written this without the alliance, so why write it that way? I think this is deliberate foreshadowing for the final war, as at least 2 of these characters are the key to taking down Imu, thanks to their alliance. Now let me ask you a question. Who is the current wielder of the Ope Ope no Mi? The man who previously formed an alliance with Blackbeard, Trafalgar Law. Have you ever wondered why Oda gave Law the devil fruit that would theoretically make somebody immortal if he is never actually going to use it on somebody else? Like, why does he have it? What is the point? So far, its only narrative payoff is that Imu was the one who got the Eternal Youth surgery 800 years ago. But what is the narrative reason for Law having the same fruit? I believe that the Ope Ope no Mi ties Law and Imu together. They are destined to meet up, and this is why Oda gave Law the ultimate devil fruit, as he is the ultimate solution to Imu's immortality eternal youth surgery. Now this is the $1 million question. Why was Law given the ultimate devil fruit? Maybe the same way you can gift somebody immortality through the eternal youth surgery. What if Law, now that he has awakened his devil fruit during the Onigashima raid, now has the ability to do eternal youth surgery reversal, meaning he can actually undo Imu's immortality. If a surgery can be performed, it can also be undone. This is why Oda had Blackbeard and Law team up together at Pirate Island, because it was foreshadowing for what was to come during the final war. Blackbeard and Law's devil fruits perfectly complement each other in terms of it being the natural counter to Imu's regeneration and immortality. Blackbeard will nullify Imu's regeneration, which is separate from his immortality, using his Logia devil fruit, which nullifies all devil fruits. Law will undo Imu's immortality eternal youth surgery using eternal youth surgery reversal, meaning that yes, Imu can actually be beaten. This solves everybody's existential crisis. Bro, what if I told you that with the recent One Piece chapter 1183, Oda just gave away a massive clue as to the truth behind why Imu decided to kidnap poor Gunko, and then gave her a deep sea contract to make her immortal, made her a holy knight, but not only that, gave her the special treatment by making her his attendant. And what makes Gunko so special to be Imu's vessel? Why has Imu chosen Gunko specifically? Honestly, I think I've cracked the code on all of these questions. So, did you catch it? Isn't it a bit strange how Gunko's eyes are 2 different colours, yet her biological parents do not share this exact same trait? This suggests that Gunko's eyes hold a much deeper meaning. It could very well be that a descendant of Gunko from the Void Century could have had these pair of eyes, where one colour is different from the other. And you know how Joy Boy stored his immense Conqueror's Haki inside the knot, right? Gunko's ancestor from the Void Century might have stored the truth of the Void Century, memories of the Void Century, secrets of the Void Century, of what truly happened during that time period within those unique set of eyes. And that could be why Gunko fears Nika, because she's actually seen Nika through her eye memories. Also, one thing to point out, her eye is red, matching the same colour as Conqueror's Haki. It is likely that for this reason, her ancestor stored the memories of the Void Century using Haki, the same way Joy Boy used Haki to store his immense power within the knot. And if that's the case, it is likely that Imu wanted to kidnap Gunko as a way to stop her from sharing the memories of the Void Century with other people. So then, you might be wondering, why doesn't Imu just simply erase Gunko? Why keep her alive then? Well, who is the person that Imu is obsessed with? She looks like Gunko in a way as well. Nefertari D. Lily. So it is likely that the reason why Imu uses Gonko as a vessel is because so that Imu can access Gonko's void sensory memories and see Lily's face again through Gonko's eyes. Maybe Imu wants to relive those memories if Lily was a romantic interest of Imu's. And if you're still not on the Gonko Haki Eye agenda, well, further evidence backs up this theory, because Gonko has been attacking Elba for several chapters now, and even whilst possessed by Imu literally getting a power up, she has never ever used her special set of eyes for any physical attacks whatsoever, suggesting that her eyes are not used for combat, they are used for a different purpose, maybe to see into the past. It could very well be that Gonko's eyes are a deliberate contrast to Madame Charlie, who could see the future. Gonko's Haki Eye ability could be a contrast to Future Sight, another Haki ability where Future Sight obviously allows you to see the future. If mastery of the Haki ability, Future Sight, allows you to see further into the future, then maybe Gonko's mastery of her own Haki allows her to see further into the past, maybe even into the first world. And once Gonko is freed from the ice, I feel like this is where we actually get the Void Century flashback. At least, bits and pieces of it depending on how much Gonko can see of the past. Gonko knows the true history, and that is why Imu brainwashed her, kidnapped her, and uses her as a vessel to see into the Void Century himself because he's so nostalgic about Lily. Anyway, what do you guys think? One of the biggest unsolved mysteries, and honestly one of the most underrated mysteries in One Piece that simply does not get enough discussion, is what exactly is Zunisha? Why is he an elephant? In fact, why is he the only elephant in the One Piece world? Why can he communicate through the voice of all things, yet cannot verbally speak? Is he choosing to walk the seas, or is he being forced to walk the seas like a puppet? Not to mention, Zunisha is over 1,000 years old, meaning he existed during the First World, 200 years before the Void Century. And how did a civilization form on the back of this elephant, culminating in the nation of Zou? Today, I will expose the 800-year-old secret that Zunisha is more than we think, because Zunisha is actually Nefertari D. Lily. Did you catch it? We were shown in the Harold flashback that Imu can possess the mind and control you to do his bidding, and we have also seen the same mind possession done on Gonko by Imu. So to me, it seems very likely that Zunisha is being dummy reversed by Imu through mind possession, and that's how he is forced to walk the sea. But did you also notice something strange about Zunisha and Davy D. Jones? Nico Robin said Davy Jones was a pirate who was cursed by a devil, presumably Imu, to roam the sea floor, as if he also committed a great crime. The same way Zunisha is forced to walk the seas because he too committed a great crime. And Imu also called Harold's rebellion against Imu's mind possession a blunder. And do you know who else Imu associated with a great blunder? Nefertari D. Lily. But here's the question that I really want you to think deeply about, because when we think about blunders in One Piece, we can actually see the visual result of that blunder in the third world or the present timeline. For example, Lily's blunder led to the poneglyphs being spread, and we can see the poneglyphs all over the world. Joy Boy's blunder ended up making the Noah rest at the bottom of Fishman Island, and the apology letter to Poseidon. Emma's blunder led to him being a switched off robot for centuries. But what is the physical result or consequence of Zunisha's blunder that we are seeing in the present timeline, because we can't see it? Especially a blunder so great that he was forced to walk the ocean. What proof is there of this great mistake? What visual evidence is there? But before I give the answer, did you catch the connection between Lily and Zunisha? Zunisha wants to break the borders of Wano, right, so that he can release the ancient weapon Pluton. But we first heard about Pluton during Alabasta. Alabasta, the nation where Lily is from, tying Lily and Zunisha together to Pluton. It is likely that to command Pluton, you need both Zunisha and Lily. That is why Imu wants Vivi, so that he can gain access to Pluton and command it the same way Imu wants the Mother Flame for Uranus. Now let me get down to the meat and potatoes of this theory. Although Lily could have spread the poneglyphs with a devil fruit, presumably Kuma's paw fruit, the problem with this theory is that if that's the case, could she not just use that paw fruit power on herself to send herself back to Alabasta, the same way Kuma used the fruit on himself during God Valley so that he could escape, because Lily never returned home to Alabasta. So I think Zunisha most likely helped Lily to transport the poneglyphs around the world, which coincidentally there is a poneglyph on Zou. Essentially, Lily and Zunisha committed the same crime together. Zunisha was Lily's enabler, but Here is the twist. We know that Imu has a soft spot for Lily, so instead of killing Lily, he uses the ultimate form of oppression on Lily and stripping away all of her freedom by fusing Lily into Zunisha as one being. And through Domareversi, Imu is forcing Zunisha and Lily to reflect on the crime of travelling the world to spread the poneglyphs by walking the ocean, essentially rubbing it in, constantly reminding them of their crime. You might be wondering, okay, how would that work? Why would Lily be Zunisha? Well, Imu is the recipient of the Ope Ope no Mi, which is why he is ageless, but the Ope Ope no Mi also comes with the personality switch technique. And we have also seen that souls can be put within objects, because Big Mom does this with her homies, and Big Mom's powers contrast Imu's powers, since we have seen Imu also make inanimate objects come to life. So if souls can be inserted into objects, then inserting a human soul into another living being isn't a stretch. And that is why Lily never returned home to Alabasta. Also, it is said that Zunisha is looking for a certain island. Maybe that island is Alabasta. Lily is trying to go home, or Zunisha and Lily are trying to go home. Also, Lily being Zunisha would answer why or how Zou, the nation of minks, formed on the back of Zunisha, because Lily is a queen, so it's only natural that the consequence of Lily being in Zunisha is that a nation would form. That is why there's rules, a culture, a structure, and they all believe in taking down the world government, and they all believe in the dawn of the world. Why Imu is actually from the Three-Eyed tribe. Why Pudding is the key to stopping Imu because of this fact. Why you are wrong about Blackbeard's reasoning for capturing Pudding. No, he does not want her for the poneglyphs. So rest be assured, eat your food to this video. This is going to be one heck of a theory video. It's going to be short and sweet, but it will hit all the marks. Alright, so you might be wondering, how on earth is Imu from the Three-Eyed tribe? Imu doesn't even have 3 eyes. Whilst that's most certainly true on a visual sense, the Three-Eyed tribe is still a big question mark in the series overall, since it is still very unexplored beyond the basic point of they can erase memories and read poneglyphs. But if the Void Century War took place 900 years ago and ended 800 years ago, currently in Elbaf, Elder Jarul is currently 408 years old, which would indicate that his parents existed during the Void Century, since they can live past 400 years. Which begs the question, why don't the giants know about the Void Century? Surely Jarul's parents would have passed down the information to him, or the other giants from his generation would have spread the news of a world-consuming, world-ending flood and a war that lasted 100 years. Surely word would spread about it throughout Elbaf. So why does no one know? Why don't the giants who have lived through the Void Century and survived it, why don't they remember what happened? Well, when we look at Whole Cake Island, we saw Pudding edit and erase Sanji's memories. This could be subtle foreshadowing for Imu and the Void Century itself, as I believe the only way for the Elbaf giants not remembering what happened during the Void Century is because Imu wiped their memory using his three-eyed powers. But because he did it on such a large scale, possibly involving the entire world and not just Elbaf, Emu's third eye is simply shut due to overuse. Perhaps there is a limit to how much you can use it, or how large of a scale you can use the memory wipe ability on. And due to his shadowy figure, we visually don't see his eye because his eyelids are pitch black, just like the rest of his shadowy figure, hiding his third eye to us readers. Since it's basically confirmed now that Imu is just a dark shadowy thing, not a person hiding beneath a mask. I mean, what the heck is this? And don't you find it bizarre that Pudding, being part of the Three-Eyed tribe, was made such a big deal out of, yet Pudding is just a minor side character? Well, Pudding and Imu parallel each other very well actually. Imu has convinced the normies of the world that the world government stand for true justice, whilst actually flying the flag of oppression. Whilst Pudding, when she first meets the Straw Hats and Sanji, seemed very friendly, but then turned out to be evil, stabbing them in the back. They also both have appearances that are considered not normal, and perhaps this is a stretch, but Emu's obsession with Lily could mirror Pudding's love for Sanji. And if you watched my video called Emu's Weirdest Secret, you will know that Oda really likes this sort of storytelling where he will foreshadow the Void Century within arcs. And if the Three Eye Tribe are such a big deal, it would make perfect sense why Imu, the main villain, is also a part of it. I mean, his entire thing is, no one can know my secret, no one can know my secret. How dare anyone find out? That is his whole thing, literally. It would make perfect sense for him to have a memory wipe ability. He doesn't want anyone to find out. This would also explain why the Three Eye Tribe can conveniently read the poneglyphs, yet every other race on the planet for some reason just can't. Except if you actually study the language like the O'Hara scholars, but you just get Buster called, because that's by narrative design. I also find it pretty redundant that Pudding's third eye was made such a big deal out of simply because she can read the poneglyphs when we already have Nico Robin. Like, what is the point? It's redundant. If Oda wanted to, he could easily make it so that Blackbeard just hunts down Nico Robin. I mean, that is narratively possible. Which leads to my second point. Pudding's true role in the final war is not to read the poneglyphs for Blackbeard. Rather, Blackbeard will use Pudding's memory reading and editing ability to find out the truth about Davy D. Jones and the Void Century, but in turn, Pudding, of her own accord, will use an ability of sorts to undo Emu's memory wipe, a reversal ability, to spread the knowledge of the truth to the rest of the world. Because whilst the Straw Hats will find out the truth at Laugh Tale, just like Roger Pirates did, it's far more time convenient for Pudding to just reveal the truth to everyone this way, rather than Straw Hat Luffy standing on top of a cliff with a microphone going, "This is the truth about the Void Century." I don't see that happening. Nor do I think Luffy is that kind of person. I think the way that everybody finds out is through this memory wipe reversal ability. The way it will work is that Pudding will telepathically transfer these memories to the rest of the world. However, the drawback is, just like Emu, this will close the third eye for good. Very much like when Emu used his third eye for the memory wipe. Literally, this entire setup ticks off all the boxes at the same time. 1. Us readers get the Void Century flashback. 2. Blackbeard will learn the truth about the Davy clan. 3. Pudding plays an actual meaningful role during the final war by exposing Emu to the entire world. 4. It will finally explain why Oda introduced the Three Eye Tribe as a significant tribe, yet Pudding being such a minor character. It's because her role was to expose Emu. However, don't get your hopes up just yet, because there is so much more to taking down Emu. Let's play devil's advocate. Recently I've been reflecting on the God Valley incident a lot, and this panel stuck out to me even the first moment I read it and even now. Where Emu throws an absolute rage of fit saying how Davy was never king. What if there's some actual truth to it? It really made me start to think, what if Emu is actually not that bad of a person during the Void Century? You know, he has to have a reason to attack. As we see him now, he is evil, but what if he started this whole war as just a regular dude? Like, it's a possibility. This is One Piece. We've seen this with tons of characters who they start off with a bad reputation, but then they end up being good guys. Now, I'm not saying Emu will be redeemed. All I'm saying is Emu might have had a justifiable reason to fight against the Ancient Kingdom. Now, I feel like a lot of people just jump to the conclusion that, you know, oh, Roxy the Beck was a good guy, so surely Davy Jones was a good guy. Look, there's an 800-year gap between them, and we know that Blackbeard is evil, so is it really a stretch to say that Davy D. Jones could have been evil? The war had to start over something. Like, I doubt Emu would have fought for no reason. I'm not Emu's lawyer, but come on, there has to be a reason. Davy must have done something. Legit, the only credible source we could take about any news about Davy D. Jones is Emu. No one else has met the guy, but he has. Also, do you remember that part of God Valley where all the Davy clan are on the stand and they're like, oh, get rid of that ridiculous, disgusting clan? You know, what kind of sin did the Davy clan commit to make the Celestial Dragons hate this clan so much? They hate this clan the most out of any clan, so what did they do? That is a massive clue that they committed some tremendous sin in the past, and we know that Davy D. Jones was the king of the world, so clearly he must have done something. There is always some truth to rumours and myths. Okay, hear me out. Let's play devil's advocate. What do we already know about the Ancient Kingdom? Well, I don't know, they were suspiciously the only kingdom that was advanced. The only kingdom? Whilst every other nation was just poor? Legit having to rely on slavery. They did that. Dressrosa did that. Would they have still done that if they had advanced technology? No, you wouldn't. And they also suspiciously had the ancient weapons. You know, the very things capable of destroying entire islands. It's as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. And then when you break your brain trying to read and figure out the mural, that once humanity touched the Forbidden Sun, they gained access to an unlimited energy source, which led to the creation of devil fruits through the power of dreams, which then also led to advanced technology. This was the unlimited energy source that everybody is fighting over in the mural text, as we see this emu looking figure holding the Forbidden Sun in his hand and everyone's just charging toward him. Which makes me think, is this the reason of the Void Century War? Like, is this what they were fighting over? And what really sealed the deal for me is when Vegapunk said during his speech that, oh, I don't know who's in the right or who's in the wrong, it's not as black and white as you think. That is a massive clue that the Void Century War is not a simple case of, oh, Ancient Kingdom good, 20 Kings bad, and they fought. Like, no, it was more nuanced than that. Because of course you're gonna think you are the good ones in a war that you're fighting. Of course you're gonna have main character syndrome. Maybe the point is, there was no right or wrong in the Void Century War. Also, the Gorosei always act like they're very shameful of what they did. Like, they never boast about it, they're never proud of it, they never show off. In fact, it's like they're ashamed of it. The fact that you have to hide what you did is shame. That is shame. That tells me that they began the war as regular people with regular human emotions. And when you literally rule the greatest kingdom in the entire world, the most advanced kingdom in the entire world, is it really a stretch to say that the king became, you know, a bit greedy, a bit selfish perhaps, a bit of an absolute, I can't say the word. You really shouldn't be surprised if we find out that David D. Jones hogged all that power, all those resources for himself. This would explain why the Ancient Kingdom is the only technologically advanced kingdom out of all the other kingdoms, which perfectly explains why poorer nations like Dressrosa had to rely on slavery to get work done. One of the 20 kings was from Dressrosa, and honestly he might have had a good reason. You're taking all the bloody resources, we want some of them. What if the reason why the 20 kings rose up and rebelled against David D. Jones is because he kept all those resources to himself? In other words, not sharing the Forbidden Sun, which is why Imu has it in the mural. He has claimed the Forbidden Sun that he so desperately wanted due to his poor upbringing. And then when you look at Alabaster, one of the 20 kings, or should I say one queen, I guess? You know what I mean. They fought against the Ancient Kingdom, and what do we see in the Alabaster arc? There is a civil war over resources. Literally, maybe the Void Century War is about a war about resources. Emu was the victim of the resources. He never had any. And that's not even mentioning the ancient weapons. That is so suspicious. Like, why do you have island destroying weapons? If there wasn't a war before the Void Century War, then why do you have these weapons in the first place? Why even create them? Why have them? Like, why? So back during God Valley, when they were all giving the Dave Clan a ton of abuse, perhaps this is the reason why. It was because of the ancient weapons. I don't know, maybe, just maybe, David D. Jones used the ancient weapons, Uranus or Pluton, to wipe out islands he thought were inconvenient. Perhaps they already revolted against him because of a lack of resources. After all, we don't know all of the 20 kings and the nations that they come from. We only know Alabaster and Dressrosa. What other kingdoms do we know of that descend from the 20 kings? Maybe David D. Jones literally destroyed them. Maybe he took part in the sea levels rising as well. It wasn't just Emu. You know, when Sabo escaped Lelucia Kingdom, maybe that was how the 20 kings escaped from their nations, and that is what kind of revolted them, or what kind of triggered them to fight against David D. Jones with Emu. Okay, Joy Boy. Let's talk about Joy Boy. What about Joy Boy then? What's his big deal? I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't think Joy Boy might have even liked the David D. Jones. I mean, look at Luffy and Blackbeard. We know Rox and Roger were rivals. Why do we all assume that Joy Boy and Davy just got along? I mean, what if they didn't? That might be the reason why he even became a pirate in the first place. Because he couldn't stand David D. Jones, and so he set sail. A pirate is somebody who is free, and you have to want to be free from something. Maybe Joy Boy didn't agree with his greedy approach to life. Maybe Joy Boy kind of stabbed him in the back and gave these other countries the resources that they wanted. Maybe he liberated them from their poverty. And that's how he met other people. I say people, but Zunisha, a walking, talking, breathing, sea roaming animal. That's how he met Toki, who's from Wano. And think about it, becoming a pirate just to fight the 20 kings seems a bit off. Wouldn't that just make you a soldier then? Like, how does that make you a pirate? That just makes you a soldier, right? So honestly, the ancient kingdom seems suspicious as heck. Like they just seem really suspicious to me. Like I can't just sit here and think, oh yeah, they were completely innocent. You know, maybe they were the lesser of the two evils, but they sure as heck weren't innocent. I think Imu's crash out during God Valley was kind of valid. Is it just me, but don't you feel like Domireversi is shaping up to be one of the worst abilities in One Piece? Now, One Piece is obviously the greatest piece of fiction of all time. It's the peakiest of all peaks of peaks. In fact, I don't even mind the fake out deaths. But I think I speak for everybody in the room when I say that Domireversi is growing to be extremely problematic for several reasons. Because quite honestly, I feel like it's ruining the series. But before I talk about the negatives, it's only fair to talk about the positives of Domireversi as well. Because Imu represents total control and oppression. Control and oppression over his own Gorosei, the entire world at large as well. Controlling the media and the propaganda to fit his own agenda. Imu is basically the biggest control freak. And then you have the total opposite, Luffy. Luffy who liberates people and entire nations, whilst Imu enslaves people and controls what nations around the world should believe, particularly about pirates and the world government dynamic. So for a character like Rock Beck, a character with so much ambition, so much drive to become the king of the world, a character that represented all of the themes of One Piece, to be reduced to one of Imu's slaves with no free will of his own, with his dreams absolutely crushed, and against his own free will ordered to wipe out his entire clan and family that he set out to save in the first place. That is truly tragic and masterful storytelling. So you might be wondering, so what's the issue with Domireversi then? Literally everything I just said about Rocks is the problem. When we first heard about the great battle between Roger, Garp and Rocks told to us by Sengoku, it felt mythical, literally something made from legends. There was so much mystery and non-stop questions surrounding this fight. Oh no, why did Rocks crash out against Roger and Garp? Wasn't he supposed to be friendly rivals with Roger? Damn, maybe Roger did something to Blackbeard, or maybe Garp did something to Eris that caused Rocks to absolutely lose his mind. I wonder what the reason could have been. So much potential, so much mystery, but no! Roger and Garp fought Rocks because Rocks became Imu's puppet, a zombie, a mindless beast with no free will of his own, a mindless guy who is a shell of his former self. It made the whole fight feel so forced and contrived, and that's my fundamental issue with Domireversi. It skips all the steps to create a compelling fight between two friendly characters. And what do I mean by this? Well, let me elaborate. Right, imagine if the fight between Luffy and Usopp was not because of Usopp's feelings about replacing the Merry, and instead Usopp just got possessed by some ability and that's why they fought. Wow, how moving. Imagine how unnatural and forced that would feel. Luffy vs Usopp was a conflict that was naturally crafted over hundreds and hundreds of chapters, with the ship breaking like in Skypiea, and Usopp's own journey of feeling inadequate, all resulting in Usopp crashing out against Luffy. It felt natural and impactful. Why? Why? Because it skipped no corners. It felt natural and believable. But if we imagine a Luffy versus Domireversi Zoro situation, it skips all the corners of building up that emotional tension and friction between Luffy and Zoro. Luffy would just fight Zoro just like he did with Usopp and Sanji, yes, but the emotional weight just isn't there. It's not there. You could also argue that he wouldn't even be fighting the real Zoro, just a shell of his former self like Roger and Garp did against Rocks. Yes, Domireversi opens the door to the possibility of endless different matchups. We could now have Domireversi Luffy versus Shanks or Domireversi Sanji versus Zoro, but those matchups feel completely weightless and cheap if there is no emotional friction between the two characters. Friction that is naturally built up over chapters over chapters over chapters. Just like Luffy versus Usopp, Luffy versus Sanji, it felt so believable because it was actually nicely built up. Imagine if Luffy fought Sanji because Sanji just got possessed. Like, it's so lame. It's so lame. It's so lame, bro. Domireversi opens the door to these very cheap and hollow and empty versions of these matchups. Like Luffy vs Shanks would sound amazing if it was naturally built up like Luffy vs Usopp, but no, Luffy vs Domino vs Shanks can happen, and yeah, it would be exciting and all that, but it skips all the steps of building up a fight that is narratively believable and engaging. I don't want to see Luffy fight a version of Shanks who can't think for himself, speak for himself, act on his own free will. Is that even Shanks? That's not even Shanks. Dominoverse just forces fights to happen without all of the narrative steps to actually get there. Not to mention, Dominoverse is literally a humiliation ritual. It ruins a character's aura. Rox was so cool, man. He's basically aura defined, but his story ended in the most uncool, auraless way possible. Reduced to a puppet. Bro casually confronted Imu right in the flower room like it was nothing. Casually defeated an admiral. Clashed with the strongest pirate, Harold. Formed the most stacked crew of all time. Yet look how it ended up, so humiliating. So don't be surprised if another aura farmer like Shanks gets dummy reversed and goes through a humiliation ritual just like Rox did. If it could happen to Rox, it could happen to anyone. The future of One Piece is looking very worrying if there isn't some kind of limitation to dummy reversey. Can Imu just dummy reversey anyone? It does feel that way. Rox was the strongest pirate in the world, so who's to say it won't happen to Luffy or your favourite character? So yes, thematically, dummy reversey fits One Piece so well, and it opens the door to many possible different matchups. However, as exciting as that sounds, those matchups feel weightless and cheap if you skip all the narrative steps of building up a fight that is believable and engaging, to instead force a conflict to happen. Roger and Garp fighting Rox, as amazing as it was, did not live up to the myth and legend that Sengoku built up. Why did Rox fight them both? What did Roger do? What did Garp do? Ah, never mind. He was just possessed. Just very underwhelming. Dominoverse just feels cheap and forced. You could literally come up with any motivation for Rox to fight Garp and Roger, any motivation, and that would be better than Dominoverse. After the absolutely insane Imu reveal in chapter 1179, it not only ended the Black Blade agenda, but it also marked the end of an era. The era of the Imu fan designs and fan theories about what lies beneath the black robe of Imu. And today, let's take a look back and celebrate the old era of Imu fan designs by doing a good old tier list, going from the least weird or disturbing to the most weird and disturbing. And as we go down the tier list, these different Imu designs just get weirder and weirder, so prepare your eyes for what you are about to see, because once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it, especially the top 3. And we will be doing 7 rankings. Coming in at bottom place at number 7, we got the standard Imu as a baddie. Now, personally, I was a really big fan of this theory, Imu being a woman. It just really fit, you know, especially if Imu is using Lily's body as a vessel, which, you know, is still very much possible with the latest chapter. Not to mention all the imagery of Imu in the flower room with butterflies. It's not exactly Chad behaviour, but at the same time, compared to the rest of the Imu designs in this tier list, it's your pretty standard generic Imu theory. Ooh, Imu is a woman. It's not as creative as the other ones that you will see, so it ranks bottom. Next, at second bottom, we have Imu as the Verf statue from Skypiea. Now, this is second place, not because of its design, even though I think it's kind of underwhelming in that aspect as well, but because I just hated this whole theory in the first place. It just felt so far-fetched. Like, are they shaped the same in this pose? Yeah, but that's just a coincidence. Like, I just never got behind this theory. And look, I was right too, because this is what we got in the actual series, okay? I was right to not believe this. Does Imu have connections to Skypiea? Yes, but him being Verf and this being Imu, it just didn't feel believable. Oda does play 4D chess, but not to this grand of a scale. Like, come on bro. And now in 5th place we have Imu as a long neck alien, and this one actually isn't too bad narratively. Imu could very well be from the moon because the eye on his hand looks very similar to the mural we see on the moon, meaning Imu could very well be an alien. I give full credit to the person who drew this, you know, he actually predicted some things very well, such as Imu having a blade. He got that right, that's awesome. Although I really love the badass official design, if we've got this goofy alien instead, I actually wouldn't mind. It actually suits One Piece. And now we've reached the top 4, and despite this being another Imu is a woman design, it actually belongs here because this design is actually so cold. It's basically what if Nico Robin and Perona fused. Just look at that red cape with those solar system planets representing the Gorosei. This is very much like the official Imu wearing a cape that has the Covenant symbol on it. This is very much close to the official in terms of aura. Everything about this is fire, from the outfit, the hair, even the eyes. We have now moved officially into the top 3 most bizarre and honestly disturbing Imu designs you will ever see. Alright, imagine after 8 years, it's finally time for Imu to get his own hands dirty and finally see his face. And then you find out Imu is a damn monkey. And honestly, considering Luffy's full name is Monkey D. Luffy, his final opponent being a natural monkey would actually be poetic. But nah, in all seriousness, I am so glad this is not Imu. I'm sorry you had to see this. Oda, I'm so glad you cooked. Oh, you thought that was weird? Well, how about Imu as an elephant? Is that even an elephant? What even is this? Is that his top lip? Why is it so long? Where's his nose? Wait, is that actually his nose? And why is he so short? Why is he so happy? Dude, I have so many questions. My eyes. What is this? Oda, I am so glad you cooked. I am so glad other people are not drawing this manga. I am so glad this is not Imu. It feels wrong to look at this. And now, coming in at first place, what everybody has been waiting for. I can never look at the Joy Boy Haki scene the same ever again. Now all I see is this. Bro, why is Imu a starfish? No, why is Imu Patrick from SpongeBob? Just look at his face. This one lacks so much aura, it's unbelievable. It's an insult to the real Imu, and Imu deserves to be insulted. Joy Boy, you actually lost to this? Bro, Imu, at this point, don't even bother giving us a face reveal. Keep that black robe on. I bet Oda saw this and thought, is this how low fans think of me? Alright, watch me cook. And then dropped the insane reveal. Anyway, I am so glad with what we actually got. The greatest villain design in the entire medium of anime and manga, there's no doubt about that. Massive thank you to my members, Cats Ate My Family, Uso Timor, and Mr. Bushido 56, you legends, and I'll see you some next time.